All right. Hello, everyone. Looks like we have a crowd on, so let's go ahead and get started with today's session. Hi, Rich. Hi, Ed. See you guys. Hopefully can hear you loud and clear as well. How are you doing today?
Hey, Colleen. Doing great.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us today, Burwood Group and Prime TSR. Hope you're each having a great day. My name is Colleen Berry. I'm the Marketing Director for Burwood Group, and I will be your host for today's session. So let's go ahead and dive right in to introduce the topic. Today's topic is Application Modernization with GCP Google Cloud Platform, Benefits, and Differentiators. Burwood Group is thrilled to partner with Prime TSR on today's session. Just a little bit about us. We are Burwood Group, an IT consulting and integration firm headquartered in Chicago with offices and employees across the U.S. We help our clients leverage the cloud to transform their IT infrastructure environments. And with Prime TSR, an expert in digital transformation, cloud, and IT strategy, we have planned a lively discussion for today focused on how you can leverage GCP to modernize your applications and workloads. So just a reminder that this session today is the first of a four-part series. If you enjoyed today's session, we would love to see you on the next few. Really, overall, we're going to be breaking down why and how you should modernize. So understanding capabilities, building a solid cloud foundation, and so on. So please join us in the future if you enjoyed today's session. Before we get started, just a couple quick housekeeping items. We've allocated 1 hour for today. We will reserve a few minutes at the end for questions, so feel free to hold on till then. If you do have any immediate questions, though, send them to us anytime throughout the chat. Just make sure you have host or panelist in the little drop-down item on the right-hand side, and we will get your questions and make sure we ask them. Throughout the majority of the presentation, we will keep all lines muted, but at the end, we're going to go ahead and unmute lines to encourage direct Q&A if you'd like to speak up and ask a question of one of our presenters today directly. And then, of course, just a reminder, we are recording today's session, and a recorded version of this webinar will be available afterwards, and we'll send it to all of you via email in addition to your Grubhub credit for joining us today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet our presenters and dive into today's agenda. I'd like to introduce Rich and Ed from Prime TSR and Burwood Group teams. So they'll introduce themselves and kick us off. Rich, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Colleen, and thank you everyone for attending. I am so excited to be here today talking about Google Cloud with all of you. But really quick, before we dive into that, I thought it would be good for both Ed and myself to give a little bit additional background to show you guys how we became the superheroes that we both are today. So for myself, I've been working between IT consulting and IT departments for about 15 years. I've mostly been doing application development. About 4 years ago, I was hired by Prime TSR as an application architect because they promised me amazing opportunities to work on all the latest and greatest and coolest cloud technologies. And actually, surprisingly, they weren't lying to me. I've been very, very fortunate to work across all three cloud platforms. I've actually done 2 projects on each one, both hands-on as well as application development and solution architecture work. Currently, I am Prime TSR's lead cloud solution architect, as well as I run 2 of our technology practices, both our application development technology practice, as well as our Google Cloud practice. Most of my time nowadays is spent doing solution architecture for a lot of our larger enterprise clients, as well as just reading and consuming and learning everything I possibly can about the Google Cloud, as well as talking and evangelizing about it. So that's what brings me here today. Ed, why don't you take it away? Tell everybody why you and me are such kindred spirits.
Thanks, Rich. So my name is Ed Keane. I run the Cloud and DevOps group at Burwood. I'm a keen, passionate technologist, especially all things cloud and DevOps. I'm in the right field for where my interests are. I've been involved with cloud for the last 8-9 years, starting with AWS back in like 2011, 2012. My background is all in software companies, so helping software companies take advantage of the cloud, modernize how they're building applications, building their infrastructure, and doing software delivery. So my cloud background started with AWS, and then it moved on to Azure at my last place. We were building a SaaS platform, all running in Microsoft Azure. The mandate was folks cannot RDP into the console of machines. Everything needs to be done through code. So it was all done through Resource Manager, Terraform, and Chef. And then here at Burwood, where I've been with for the last 3 years, we are focused on helping to modernize our enterprise customers, how they deliver IT services, how they build infrastructure, helping teach them the concepts like infrastructure as code, evangelizing DevOps within their companies, and then working with a lot of greenfield software startups, which is a lot of fun as well, helping them take advantage of all the cloud services. So a lot of those services we're going to run through today and in the rest of the webinar series. So we wanted to kick things off with a poll, to get an idea as to what people's background is. It will help us tailor some of the content here, maybe get some discussion going at the end. So we want to start with, hey, what's your role and what group are you a part of in your current organization? Let's give people a minute here to answer this one. And then if you scroll on down in your polling panel, and Rich, if you go to the next slide, there'll be a second question here. Application modernization means a lot of different things to different people. So kind of curious, what do people primarily and instinctively think of when they hear application modernization? So there should be 2 polling questions, 1 and 2. Bunch of different answers for them. The second question here is a multi-select, so you can select all the relevant ones for what application modernization means to you, or up to 3. All right, so we should be able to close this out. It gives people plenty of time. And while we wait for the poll to close out, Rich, you want to move on to the next slide?
Yeah, sure. Do we want to go ahead and talk about this now, or
yeah, the poll was ended. I don't see where they find the results yet. So yeah. So while we want to find the results, let's go ahead and talk about the agenda.
Yeah, sounds good. So like Ed said, while that's going on, here's our agenda for today. Really quick, before we get into this, I just wanted to say that I know a lot of you today are going to be here just looking at finding out more information about the Google Cloud in general, or maybe you're looking at building an application from scratch. I think that you guys are going to get just as much out of this as the people who are here who might have an application in the near long term that they want to modernize. Oftentimes fixing an application, especially these days, really requires fixing the underlying platform. And in the cloud world, as we know, the underlying platform and the application itself have been very tightly tied together. So again, I think everyone here is going to get a lot out of this. Before I go on to the agenda, I see our polls are up. So what did that come out at? How does that look?
Yeah, it's a pretty wide spectrum for people's background. So the predominant ones, but only just, are the usual culprits around like infrastructure and IT operations, and then the second one around like software engineering and application development. So those are the front runners here, but there's still a wide mix with folks across project management, business analytics, data as well. So there's definitely going to be relevant parts for everybody here, what we're going to cover. And then the next one, it's interesting. The top things here, cloud services and the use of cloud platforms was the number 1. And what does application modernization mean to you? The use of latest technologies was in there at number 2, and then new functionality is number 3. So those are the top 3 that people rated. Handful of people noted like increased reliability and security and UI UX redesign. What we're going to see here is it can cover all of the above. And so when I think about application modernization, I think about moving to cloud native applications and including in there like the enhanced reliability and security as part of like building those applications. So that's one of the things as we go through this too.
Yeah. This is pretty interesting to me. I was really curious to see how many software developers were going to be on versus everyone else, and I'm very happy to see actually infrastructure management was our top one in terms of background. It's great. Looks like we have a great diversity actually of everybody across the board, and then yeah, for as well as what people think of when they think of modernization, I actually like that UX was just sprinkled in there, but one of the bottom ones. But that's actually one of the things that I think we're going to really touch on later to show why that's at least modernizing the UI and UX technology is very important as well these days when going into the cloud platform. So great. Hopefully we all learned something. So to go back then to today's agenda really quickly, we're going to start out with the motives why applications need to be modernized, and really, why you want to do it, why our organizations want to do it, and what are the right things to be modernizing. That's what I want to focus on just as much as how to modernize using the Google Cloud solutions. I want to focus on, why, which are the top priority things to be modernizing. After that, we're going to talk about some things that Google Cloud does just better than any of the other cloud vendors that they have some really amazing technologies and capabilities in, as well as our developing a long-term cloud platform strategy. So a lot of organizations now have 1, 2, 3, 16 different clouds that they're using, and some of them have no idea how they've gotten there because they really haven't strategized and planned for that long term. You can end up with some really nasty bills that way, which we've gotten a lot of business out of, but to do cost savings. But yeah, this is why you should obviously plan for the long term. And then finally, we're going to talk about priming cloud adoption, what you need to be thinking about when you adopt any cloud. And that's really going to play into our next session, which Ed is going to lead about those initial like day zero activities that everyone should be doing when they initially adopt a cloud. So let's get on to it. So if there's one thing I want everyone to take away today, it's that we all need to always be modernizing. I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but if you're not modernizing, that means you're just maintaining. And if we're just maintaining, that means what you're doing is probably either not worthy of your time, or actually your company might be overpaying you. Again, I'm probably preaching to the choir here. I know that this is why I got into the business. It's to solve interesting problems. It's to find business value. It's to fix things. It's to learn things. I assume that's why everyone here is on this call, is they want to learn something new. So, it's very important to just keep doing this. And if you need some additional reasons why you want to modernize, I think it's pretty good for all of our careers as well. You solve problems, you expand your skill sets. I'm not going to read off everything here, but one key bullet point here is looking good. I think that took me a little while to figure out in my career, is that no matter how well you solve problems and decrease costs and build yourself out of a job, if you're not getting the credit for what you're doing, no one's going to know to give you bigger and better and more interesting problems to solve, which is really my goal, to continue to gain trust to solve those big problems. When I started out, my problems was I needed to move pixels back and forth, and I was very excited to be able to successfully do that. If I had to do that now, I think it'd be pretty boring. My problems now are concerned with moving terabytes of data back and forth, and those are the interesting problems to me. And I hope 5 or 10 years from now, moving terabytes of data back and forth is boring to me with whatever I'm doing.
I think a key takeaway here for me, Rich, is that it doesn't matter what level in the organization you're in, or part of your stage in your career you're at, right? Whether you're just getting started or you've been in leadership for the last 20 years, like the idea of continuous innovation is key and is super attainable. So for somebody who's like just starting in their career, that just started in a new role, like bringing new ideas and going out on your own to find like innovative solutions is what as a leader, like I look for, and it always just brings a smile to my face when my team members do that. And then as a leader, I'm also trying to do everything that I can to stretch my team and teams and the customers' teams that we work with to continuously innovate and to not rest on our laurels. So again, no matter what level you're at in your career, there's always something that you can do here around innovation and modernization.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. So, we all love to modernize. As Ed said, there's always something new to do. But I think what really separates out the good technologists from the great technologists is the ones who continue to ask the question, why am I modernizing? What's the top priority thing to modernize? So, you have to identify that business value. You have to measure that business value, and you have to prioritize that against other things that you can be modernizing. We all love to go and fix things. I certainly do, but unfortunately, we don't always get to work on the things that we want to. It should always be driven by business value, because if you don't drive it through that, you're going to end up modernizing the wrong things for the wrong reasons, and even potentially the wrong way. So again, we're going to be focusing a lot on the whys of what you should be doing, as well as how you should be doing it. So now specifically to what are your motives to modernize an application. A legacy application, I'm sure everybody knows, has a litany of potential issues. And one point I want to make here is that any of these could be the highest priority piece to modernize at any given time, given a company situation, and given what their business is and how it impacts their business. One of my companies, for example, that I worked with in the past, they did keep modernizing again and again and again. They were a telecommunications company who basically in the 90s, if you ever made a long distance telephone call, every single one of your calls went through a piece of their hardware. They were all over the United States, and they were actually worldwide as well. They were one of the biggest companies in Chicago, a multi-billion-dollar company, and they kept modernizing their hardware that they had already sold, which was analog hardware. And every time they modernized it, they'd put out another feature pack, and they make a whole ton of money upgrading and upgrading and upgrading. The problem was they did not invest in the digital world. And by the time they started to, Cisco and a bunch of other players were on, and now that company barely exists in some form or another. It's been bought and sold so many times, but again, they were interested in solving problems. They were just interested in solving the wrong problems. And again, to illustrate that point, we see Google here, their first logo in 1997, all the way to their current logo today. I think it's really interesting to consider the fact that at some point, it was actually more important for Google to modernize their logo than to increase their actual search capabilities and the speed of their searches. Because if they would have just maintained that old logo, their business wouldn't be where it is today. So prioritizing and knowing when to do that is very important. Let me go on to, so as we talk about these, I'm going to go through each one and talk about, Ed and I will both talk about the why it might be important to modernize that specific aspect of the application, and then also how to do it with the Google Cloud. So first off, it comes down to just the application functionality itself. Based on whether the application is your current business, if it's a product, or if it's just helping your process, there's a lot of different situations the application could end up in. So the first one is the application is serving its purpose, but it has the potential to be doing a lot more. In that case, detect that business value, and we'll go into how critical is it and for your organization's success that depends on that. How much more value can the application provide? In another case, the application might be doing what it's doing all along, but the business process itself has changed and the application hasn't been able to keep up. And in that case, sometimes your application starts defining your business process instead of the other way around, which we all know is terrible. So, you really have to keep up to date an application. And then there's chance that the application just isn't necessary anymore, and you should go ahead and get rid of it, or the application's perfect and this isn't a problem at all and don't touch it. But if you sense that there's business value to be gotten out of it, here is the things that you need to be doing. There's been books and business analysis is a whole field unto itself. There's a bunch of different methods and a bunch of different self-help sections on how to do business analysis. But the one key one I want to point out here is the buy versus build and the 6 R's. I'll tell you from my personal perspective, I was an application developer, still am in a way for about 10 years, and I don't always recommend building a custom application. It is a super expensive endeavor, and unless you are a really big organization who has the money to fund that, and you really have your custom business processes that you're going to get the value out of because they're so tightly wound in what you do and how you deliver it, then it's good to build a custom application. If you're a smaller company, you could still build a custom application, but make sure you really, really need it, that you have some kind of very customized, tailored business process that you can't get with an off-the-shelf product. I'd say about half the applications that I've worked on actually should have probably been Salesforce implementations, honestly. You have to be a little bit careful there because once you get into the Salesforce and the ServiceNow world, you can customize those as well. And if you really start customizing those, then you're paying for the development licenses or the application licenses as well as the development team. But if you can just use the out-of-the-box functionality for a lot of things like that, I think you could save yourself a lot. Applications development is kind of like buying a boat. You just keep throwing money into it and throwing money into it and throwing money into it to enhance and maintain. And it can be worth it, absolutely. But as an application developer, seeing the heartburn, it's not something I always recommend. Anyway, the 6 R's, if you guys aren't familiar with this, really quickly, if you're just trying to decide what to do with a legacy application, go through, ask yourself, rehost, replatform, repurchase, refactor, retire, retain. And I'm not going to spend any more time on this slide because I have to get moving so we get to talk about the interesting Google stuff. So another problem with a lot of legacy applications is the user interfaces can just, go out of date. And the first question that I love to ask when I'm working on a new application is, who's the target audience? Is this a B2C application? Is this a B2B application? Or is this a B2E application? Obviously, if it's a B2C application or a B2B application, the user interface is critical. It is part of your business. It's your whole image as a company, and almost nothing is more important than that. So you understand how critical the user interface might be. Finally, we're going to start actually talking about some Google technologies right now to help you modernize a user interface. First, Firebase, if you haven't heard of it, is a mobile, more geared towards mobile application development, but it is used for cross-platform development as well, mobile, tablet, desktop. It's backed by the Google Cloud platform, but it is a separate platform unto itself where you don't have to sign up for the Google Cloud platform in order to use Firebase. It's its own portal, and it gives you a lot of tools and capabilities out of the box to synchronize your server databases with your small databases that might be inside the applications, as well as it allows you to leverage functions and APIs in the back end and that kind of stuff. Flutter is Google's language of kind of the write once, run anywhere mentality, if you believe in that kind of thing. it does work well for, if you're writing between iOS and Android apps. Once you start going in the tablet and desktop world, in my experience, that's where it gets a little shaky. But it's good to have in mind. So really quick, I'm going to cheat here, and this is not just about the user experience, but this is about the front end technology. Very important is if you have a current application that is a bunch of just spaghetti JavaScript code that's really just unwieldy, horrible to maintain. For 10 years, I wrestled with JavaScript code. I pretty much almost gave up on it because I didn't see a way that it was going to be improved or evolved. Finally, two key technologies came out, which I love nowadays. Both Angular, which was developed by Google, as well as TypeScript, which is a language that was developed by Microsoft. Using these two together really can make your front end code as structured and using the same design patterns and using basically your front end code is going to be no messier than your back end code, at least, which is an improvement considering how JavaScript used to be. There's also two other reasons why to modernize this. One is that you get to decouple your front end from your back end. And when you're looking at modernizing an entire application and going to microservice architectures, if you're built on those legacy technologies like JSP pages or classic ASP.NET, or even some of the MVCs and the Spring framework and all that, they used to tie your front end really tightly to your back end. And sometimes starting at that UI layer is a really good place to start if you're looking at starting modernizing your application, because that's where you have the chance to decouple first. And then after that, you could send your UI to use whatever microservices are available in the back end. So this next, another thing that commonly happens with legacy applications, obviously they become insecure, vulnerable, or non-compliant. Obviously, you're going to have litigation if this happens, and you're going to have a real bad reputation. For example, when I first started working for TSR, one of my first projects was a company who was had needed to basically rebrand to get away from an image that they had. They were a multi-million-dollar, $100 million growing company, probably going into the billions, and they lost about half their customers, and they lost all that momentum because they had a really terrible accident that got published in all the papers where all this medical and personally identifiable information was lost. That reputation stuck on them for years, and they basically had to completely rename and rebrand themselves in order to get away from it, just so when people typed in the Google searches that they that they wouldn't be associated with that event anymore. We've obviously heard about the Targets and the PlayStations and the stuff like that. So, this can obviously be critical. This is, again, one of the why reasons. And here's everything in Google that Google provides to help you lock down an application once you build it. Obviously, there's the basic identity access management, authentication. There's VPCs and VPNs. They have the encryption mechanisms, key management systems, both on Google, and you could bring your own keys. They have security scanners to make sure that your web application isn't vulnerable of any web attacks like SQL injections or DDoS attacks. They actually have an entire platform now called the Security Command Center, which are able to get a complete view of everything happening in within the Google Cloud platform from a security perspective. And then there's also the Cloud Operations platform. It used to be called Stackdriver, if you're familiar with that. But basically, that's where all your monitoring, your logging is, your alerting. You get a really good sense of that. Ed, anything I forgot here to add in terms of security?
No, I think just calling out that a lot of this stuff is available out of the box, and I either turned on out of the box or with some minimal effort and configuration. Not to say that it doesn't require kind of combing through it and digging in deeper to optimize it, but at least getting started with it's very easy. Around the security command center, Stackdriver. Stackdriver also has some APM functionality as well around trace and debug too. So a whole host of tools that Google and the other cloud providers provide right out of the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the time security people focus really on, hey, is it safe in the cloud? That was one of the arguments, a number of years ago. It's one of the first arguments that comes up. People are really feeling more comfortable with it. We work for some federal clients now who are using clouds without any problem. Deutsche Bank, Lufthansa, Sabre, they're all using, cloud technology now. People have realized, it's that joint security model. As long as you're doing your due diligence, it's just as secure, if not more secure, than in your own data centers. So another common reason to get to the cloud quickly is if the platform you're building on itself is just completely unstable. In order to determine how bad that is and what your urgency to get yourself to the cloud and take advantage of those that durability and reliability and redundancy, perform a business impact analysis. That again is going to help you build your business case to get this done. If you know it's a problem, you've identified that this is your business value here, how much of a problem it is, the measuring, you have to perform the business impact analysis, and then you have to prioritize it against all the other stuff we just talked about. If, again, is your UI more important than your ability to recover data? It might actually be if your UI is what people really care about while using your application. So define and establish, the business continuity plans, the SLOs, the SLAs, your recovery time objectives, your recovery point objectives. This is actually one of the things that TSR does really well when we come in. We always cross our T's and dot our I's in terms of this, not just from a CYA perspective, but from a, to get people thinking about this kind of thing. These are often the things that slip through the cracks. And here's all the reasons that all the technologies and all the platforms with Google that you could use to increase reliability and strengthen durability. We're going to go into these a lot more in depth in our future sessions. I will take a quick pass at them now just to let everybody know. Compute Engine is basically VM technology is what it is. It's the same as AWS EC2s or Azure VMs, if you're familiar with those. GK and Anthos. I see I'm a little bit behind time now, but if I had time, I could probably spend the next half hour talking about that easily. But Anthos is a really exciting technology we're going to be getting into. App Engine is similar to app service plans for Azure, or Elastic Beanstalk for AWS. Cloud functions are essentially like Lambdas, and there's just a litany of data solutions that we're going to talk about later. But all of these solutions are backed by redundant platforms that are easily configurable to where, all of these dots on the map there are 3 data centers for each one of those dots that are completely disjoint. So if one goes down, you automatically fail over to the other 2 data centers. And most of the time, that's just out of the box, spinning up any cloud service at all. What can be configured is if the whole data center fails or a whole region goes out, going to the other regions. So a lot of security there and a lot of reliability and strength. Actually, yeah, I'm behind on time, so I don't have time to tell my cool, fun stories. Need to get moving. So another thing that happens with a lot of applications, clearly performance issues, and this is one of the things that the cloud does amazingly, both scaling both vertically and horizontally. It provides you those services to do that. there's a couple different ways that application performance matters. Obviously, the actual transactional performance and responsiveness. So being able to bring up your reports, being able to do those searches quicker, being able to display statuses. But then on the back end, there's a whole nother set of performance with which, how fresh is your data, and, how quickly are you able to get those reports. One of the first applications that I did work on was known in the company as the e-constipator. It was supposed to be called the e-configurator, and it took about 2 years to get to the point to where people actually called it the e-configurator again. So when I came up to people and I said, they asked me, hey, what do you do in the company? And I said, oh, I work on the e-configurator. And they'd be like, oh, the e-constipator. Finally, I didn't have that conversation again and again and again. So, modernizing an application's performance, is pretty important. Back then, I didn't have the cloud to do it with. I think it would have gone a lot faster and a lot quicker. But here's all the technologies you could do it within the cloud.
I think
Ed, please. I was just about to. Yeah.
Folks have often solved application performance issues by throwing more hardware, right? Faster storage, more CPUs, faster CPUs, more memory. Throw more hardware at application performance issues, and if you do so in the cloud, like it's going to be very expensive. And it is on premise too, but notably expensive in the cloud. And the cloud is built cloud's best served with these dynamic, elastic, modernized applications, right? So that's how, when you get into application performance issues, you start to look at some of the approaches that Richard talk about with decoupling, breaking apart your monolith, decoupling your services, and then you can start to make use of some of those cloud services to be more elastic too, and more cost efficient.
Yep, absolutely. And I think in our further sessions, we're definitely going to dive into what those different cloud native architectures are, and using serverless technologies and using fully managed solutions. I wish we had more time to talk about those now, but that's why we're saving it for the future. There's Google provides just a litany of data solutions. Bigtable, that's actually basically what their Gmail is based on, as well as Google Search, as well as Google Maps. A lot of Google's core functionality is built on the same technologies that are available for us to build our platforms on as well. So again, we're gonna dive into those in the future, but really right now, I just our goal is to make you aware that they exist. A lot of teams, a lot of legacy applications get plagued by really slow development because there's a mess of code and it becomes really tedious to maintain it, to make any change at all. And then after that, you get tons of bugs. So, how important it is to your team to be able to quickly turn around changes in the application. Maybe there's no changes that come and the application's solid. In that case, it's not really worth changing anything because you don't have to, there's no speed to improve. However, if your application, if your business is constantly changing and your application has gotten behind, like we talked about before in terms of functionality, it's extremely important to be able to move quickly. And I think, Ed, this is where in DevOps, talking about that's 90% of the solution of this is getting your development processes down, but also what the cloud provides is just a whole bunch of these technologies and services out of the box that are really turnkey frameworks that, you don't have to rebuild the wheel, essentially, which a lot of developers seem to like to do. And in my opinion, the least code, the better, or the less code, the better. And as you can see here, there's a lot of message and service buses. There's Cloud Composer is a workflow engine actually And down at the bottom, cloud source, cloud build, and cloud code, those are all related to DevOps. Ed, I should give you a chance to speak on this because I know this is your sweet spot.
Yeah. This is what we are often able to kind of piggyback off of with helping bring firms onto the cloud is start to get them into using source control, getting into like continuous integration and continuous delivery with some of the cloud tools like Google's Cloud Build, and kind of helping helping traditional IT folks get into the idea of writing simple code for their infrastructure templates and bringing that into pipelines as well, and then automating like the logging and the monitoring that happens from there.
Yep, absolutely. And where would Batman be without his utility belt to help him fight crime and solve all the problems? He wouldn't be the superheroes, that he is today. I think this next section, you're gonna you could take it from here. You were gonna tell us a lot about the industry-specific services.
Yeah, that's it. So Google, in addition to providing all these great cloud services that we touched on at a high level, and we're going to dig on deeper around data, or application services, operation services. They also have specific capabilities for different industries. So as you can see here, how many of the like the top companies in each of these industries are utilizing Google Cloud. And if you skip to the next slide, Rich, we'll go to some of the specifics. So Burwood's a big in IT healthcare, and we have a number of healthcare companies, customers. And so Google as well has specific solutions for healthcare, starting with their healthcare API. There's a lot that we do with healthcare companies around setting up like Cloud Pub Sub, utilizing data proc and data flow, and helping them around getting insight into their healthcare data, getting more real-time feedback from their healthcare data, and a lot, especially recently, around COVID and contact tracing applications. Google's done a lot to help healthcare and research institutions around funding for COVID initiatives as well. If you skip on to retail as well, retail is one of the more prominent industries for utilizing cloud services, whether it's like SaaS applications or building on top of what Google provides here. Here you can see just how Google can help around real-time inventory management. We're working with a warehouse, like a modern warehouse company out on the West Coast, building services on top of Google, utilizing their API, running as much as we can as managed service and serverless, so that they can run lean without a heavy operations team. And it's all about, for them, providing the visibility to their customers, and their customers are now asking for open APIs so that they can integrate into the software platform that this modernized warehouse is building. So it's really interesting to see that the software companies' customers are now becoming software companies, and they want to integrate into it too. So it's another solution that Google provides.
Yeah, I love the IoT solutions. I really hope to get to work on one of those in the future, ingesting data from thousands of devices that spit out, a megabyte every couple seconds. And that's how you really get into the terabyte range. I think a lot of retail and, point of sale systems, are leveraging those. And Google does such an amazing job, consuming all of that. And they really have some white glove kind of services and out of the box solutions to help with all that. Sorry, Ed, I just had to go in there.
Yeah, I think you kind of
Exciting.
Touched on very quickly. One of the coolest things about Google and kind of all things cloud is the ease of use with getting set up, right? With an incredibly powerful system like PubSub, that hey, we can set it up and we're going to send a couple of messages, or it's going to scale to billions and trillions of messages, and handling IoT around the world. The same again with BigQuery. We want to get set up with a very simple BigQuery data set. Maybe if I wanted to kind of do some of my own personal analysis on my taxes or finances, great, I can do it easily in BigQuery. Or, hey, BigQuery handles huge petabyte data loads. So that's one of the things that I enjoy most about the cloud is that lower barrier to entry.
Absolutely. I'll go to the next slide, and really quick, I guess for your out of the box with BigQuery, we actually did TSR did a hackathon recently, and I got to use some of those out of the box BigQuery data sets on COVID. And it was just incredibly easy what I was able to set up in honestly a matter of hours. Nothing that I'd suggest for enterprise scale, but if you want to get going quickly and get that real boost, it's amazing what you can do in such a short period of time.
Right. Another case study here quickly is Google's got a very strong presence in higher ed, and especially a lot of research institutions using Kubernetes, and Google's managed service GKE is the de facto place to run Kubernetes, and so higher ed being able to take advantage of this to automate how they provision like Jupyter Hub notebooks for their students. So like I've called out here, they can spend more time teaching and less time coding. And these are like pre-built cloud environments, so they can just dynamically spin up and then destroy afterwards. And this is using Terraform as well, which we'll go into in a future session. Yeah, the next slide, Rich.
Yep. So I could pick it up here again. So how does the cloud and how does Google Cloud fit into your organization? There's a lot of different cloud vendors out there to choose from. And this is the way I look at it, at least in terms of how do you select your one or many clouds. These are the 4 categories I break it down. What's your business alignment look like? What are the financial incentives and the cost structures? And then what's your technical identity as a company? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be a little bit more in the open source world, a little bit more in the commercial world? What technology stack are you using? And after that, just the pure technical capabilities, because if you're going to AI, for instance, Google is, we're going to talk about this, but Google's a well cut above everybody else. So I have just little, some information on each. So business alignment, business partnerships, sometimes these are very valid reasons to select a particular cloud. Walmart, Gap, Kroger, one of my, our director of partners actually loves to tell this story, and it was very interesting for me to find out. They will never use AWS technology ever because they are in direct competition with AWS on for retail, food retail, clothing retail, household items. Why would any of those organizations, essentially be using a technology that's built by their on their competitor and helping their competitor? So sometimes, actually, a lot of the times, I find that the business reasons and the financial incentives are sometimes more important than.
Oh, Rich, I think we have lost you just then, Ed.
Yeah, I see that. I'm still here.
Sometimes. Oh.
We got you now, Rich. I don't know what happened, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I got a little notification, yeah, that it was slow. I'll go on. Oftentimes they'll give you financial incentives for jumping on their cloud first. I think they're kind of like cable providers or phone providers in this way. It's, hey, sign up for a free year with us, then you build out all your stuff and they get you on your system and then you get the bills later on. But taking advantage of those financial incentives early on to really do POCs and to see the power and see how well you can leverage it is a great thing to do. Oftentimes we'll do that for a lot of our customers since we have such good relationships with Google. We'll say, hey, we'll go to Google and see what they're willing to give you to basically help you out and help us build something to you for free. And then sometimes you just might want to diversify your technology stack. There's nothing wrong with adopting all 3 clouds because each one has strengths in each area and you don't know what's going to be happening for the future and what's going to change. And not only that, you kind of get to play them off each other and drive down your cost through market competition as well. So all good business reasons. Ed, I'm definitely going to want your feedback on this after I'm done too, but this is what I consider to be Google Cloud's technical identity. I really feel like it's a cloud built by developers for developers, really passionate technologists and it ties in tightly to the open source community. I think that it forces you to do things the right way. One of the things it's not as good at, which I'll openly admit, is Google Cloud's the platform's UI interface. The console is not very intuitive, not very user-friendly, and it provides limited functionality, actually. And in a way, I consider this to be a strength because it forces you to use the templates, to write the right code so that you can spin up your environments and everything you've done is documented properly. So, it's really for people who want to do this thing the right way and really understand all those different configurations. That to me is the identity of Google Cloud, because I've been to a couple companies where somebody hired, somebody who said they were an Azure architect or they have experience with Azure. And yes, they were able to log in and they were able to click around, and it's really easy to get yourself spun up there. I'll admit it happened to me too. The first time I realized I could spin up a whole infrastructure and application myself, I was very excited. But of course, I quickly realized that I have little idea what I'm doing in this area, and anything I spin up is going to be either not as secure or not done as properly as an actual network or infrastructure guy. And this is, to a larger point, exciting for me because we're really breaking down those silos. I feel like everybody is kind of slowly becoming developers, and developers are also slowly becoming network and engineering guys, and we're all able to work together and collaborate a lot better. So really quickly, containerization, as Matt mentioned, if you're doing anything with containerization, Docker, Kubernetes, etc., this is Google Cloud's your place to play around in. They do it better than anyone else. Ed, what are your thoughts on the cloud's technical identity?
Yeah, I think you nailed it with a lot there. Personally, I find it having gone through all of the big three cloud providers and most recently spending the last couple of years at Google, I thoroughly enjoy using Google as a technologist. It's so open and innovative. And if you look at the open source things that they've backed and pushed with Kubernetes and Go, the data capabilities, like as a technologist, it's where we run our application and where I want to continue building and growing on. I find that I think you had a really interesting point on how software engineers are having to learn like networking and operations, and GCP really helps support that. Like you can't build your application on GCP without knowing like what a VPC is and how are you going to do your subnetting, and how are you going to manage your service accounts. And similarly, like it provides the ease of use for infrastructure folks to learn, like, okay, how can I do this programmatically with like the Cloud Shell, and then even start getting into the API as well. And it provides the tools to help kind of ease people into that.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of great trainings out there as well. Coursera courses and all that. I want to make sure we leave enough time to get people to answer questions. So we'll try to wrap up the presentation part in the next 2 minutes and at least give people 5 minutes to answer everything. I'm sure, Colleen, you're like the director at the Academy Awards right now, like clock. Sorry, once we get talking about this stuff, it's just really easy, to keep going. And to that point, I don't get to talk as much about Anthos as I would like to in this session, but I know we have 3 more hours, Ed, so somewhere in there, I'll get to really dive into it. But that's one of the thing, multi-cloud, if you're looking at doing multi-cloud environments or slowly moving up your application to the cloud, and you don't want to do just a simple lift and shift, but you also want to use cloud native services, Anthos is the way to essentially do that. And it's a really cool technology. Google's network is by far and beyond the fastest network. They're the only ones who guarantee your data will get to you within milliseconds, no matter how archive or cold storage it is. That first byte, time to first byte is milliseconds with Google, whereas some of the other cloud providers, it's minutes, if not hours. AI, I shouldn't even have to say it. Google is just, their services are well far and beyond in AI, and as well as data science, which kind of goes along with AI. but their notebook technologies and their data analysis using things like MapReduce and Spark. And again, a lot of those technologies that are a little bit more on the open source side of the world. Google essentially invented a lot of those technologies, honestly, and a lot of the other clouds are using them, just put wrappers around what they've already done and have those services. Ed, anything you could think of here about differentiators?
No, nothing else to add yet, Rich.
Yep. Oh, wow, we still have the poll questions.
We can just go through these if you, so everybody will see new poll questions come up around your current or your organization's current cloud footprint and your long-term cloud strategy and where you want to be. And I guess, well, we can keep these polls open for a few minutes and move on to wrap this up in Q&A.
Yep. So really quickly to go through this, clearly clouds is the way of the future. If you haven't, realized this already, hopefully we all have, but here's all the, interesting and great statistics about showing that and backing that. You could take a closer look at these, when we send out the video afterwards, but, it really drives home the point how much money is pouring into the cloud. Google has their own cloud adoption framework, which again, we're going to get into probably more Burwood's adoption framework next time and how they do their cloud zero activity or day zero cloud activities. But a lot of time and effort has been put into this and thought from both Google side, Burwood side, how to get this going and how to get your company adopting it. So, this just gives you a high level of how to do that. You can look it up online and see these same images here. Really, to wrap this up quickly, I want to just say again, modernizing. We always keep modernizing, identify that business value, measure the business value, prioritize that business value. This is how you really can build a business case to people who are higher up who are making these decisions to show them the impact and allow you to work on the bigger, fun, great problems. And obviously, I trust everyone here to evaluate what the right solutions are. Now they know how amazing Google Cloud is and what it could do. Two more quick bonus slides is you've seen that we have a lot of superhero theme going throughout this deck. These are the infinity stones of application development, basically everything we've talked about today, from functionality, usability, security, availability, performance, and adaptability. Adaptability being more DevOps and how quickly you can move forward and make these enhancements. If you have all these down, you're doing really well. You could probably snap a new application into place just like that. And if you don't, someone else is going to snap you away just that easily, and you're going to fade away. So keep modernizing, keep doing it. Finally, I got it, Colleen. We're on to the Q&A section.
All good. Thank you both so much for wrapping that up. We do have a couple minutes to spare. So first things first, let's get right to it. We have one question in the chat. Rick and Ed, if I want my team to learn more about Google, what resources have you found helpful when you got started? What would you recommend?
So I'll jump in here. So Google, I was trying to post a link, but it won't let me hit send in WebEx. So Google has some great online resources, some of which they outsource. There's a great course that I'd recommend if you're looking to deep dive into it, for like a 10-hour plus course. There's a great course that Google will redirect you to on Coursera. We'll include the link in the follow-up here so people can have it. I believe that it's free and kind of funded by Google for like the first 30 days. So we'll send that through.
Yep, great. And now's a little bit of my time to shine too. I actually do before the COVID situation, I did live training, and I also do online training specifically geared towards the Google Cloud Architecture certification. I think, striving to get that certification for anybody is a great way just to learn about the platform, whether you get it or not. It gives you great awareness of all the technologies that are available to you out there. And that's what I do when I'm taking studying for certifications exams. Sometimes I don't care as much if I pass it, just to get that knowledge. Really quickly, I also provide online practice exams for certifications, and I'm willing to give those out to anybody who emails me for free. I have plenty of free links to give out as well through Udemy. Plugging myself really quick selfishly, but let's go on to another question if we have anything else.
So, Rich, what do you think GCP does way better than either AWS or Azure?
Hands down, I mean, I got to go with the AI services. What about you, Ed?
For me, I think it's like as a software engineer, the ease of use of which I can get set up with App Engine and Cloud Functions and PubSub, and then as an infrastructure guy as well. Like if I want to start running Kubernetes, like I'm always going to run it on GKE.
That's a good point. Yeah, anything containers as well, GKE, Kubernetes, Docker. If you're in that space, there's no reason not to be on Google. And as a developer, like you said, to get that stuff up and running quickly and easy from a developer perspective, it was very intuitive for me. It made a lot of sense, with not much of a high learning curve there.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. And thank you, attendees, for the questions. As you can see, we've got Rich and Ed's contact info up here on the screen. So if anything else, please feel free to just reach out to them directly. We're happy to chat. And in our follow-up email, we'll include some links to that training that they both mentioned, so you all can check that out. So with that, let's go ahead and wrap up for today. As you can see here on the screen, our next session, Google Cloud Readiness, 5 Simple Steps to Effective Onboarding, that will occur 2 weeks out from today. So everyone here on the call is going to get a follow-up email. We'll include a link to register there, but if you are anxious to do it now, feel free to pop over to burwood.com/events, and you can go ahead and register there as well. So with that, we will go ahead and close out for today. Thank you so much, Rich and Ed, for joining us. Thanks, everybody, for listening and participating. You'll receive this recording as well as a Grubhub credit via email. So please enjoy a future lunch on Burwood Group and Prime TSR. And as I said, please connect with our presenters or myself with any questions. We'd love to tailor the future sessions to our attendee challenges, ask things like that. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks again for joining Burwood Group and Prime TSR today, and hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, all.